Good morning, Boker Tov, Rechavia Nachlaot in Yerushalayim, and to everyone around the world that's watching us as well. Thank you so much for joining us as we continue in our course of Tehillim according to Chassidut. We're in the middle of learning the letter Gimel, the paragraph of Gimel, and we're on verse 19, Pasuk Yutet. Ger anochi ba'aretz, al taster mimeni mitzvotecha. I am a stranger on the earth. Do not hide your commandments from me. David the Melech, in the most simple meaning of this verse, is saying that he is a ger. He is a stranger in the land, which means to say, as Rashi says, that his days are numbered. Therefore, he feels himself like he's estranged. In a moment, we're going to hear some deeper, beautiful interpretations over here. But just to start off, that David HaMelech says as follows: since my neshama is not accustomed to the ways of this world, because this is a very coarse world, a very physical world. It's from a different world, a different plane. It just feels estranged over here amongst the inhabitants of this world. And sometimes it's difficult for me to elevate myself to understand godly concepts, as we talked about over the last couple of days. Therefore, I request from you, al taster mimeni mitzvotecha, that all of these material objects around me should not disturb from my focus on you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, there are different ways of understanding this verse. I'd like to start with a very, very beautiful interpretation, which says as follows. You see, when we say Aretz, earth, what are we referring to? We're referring to this world, Olam Hazeh, this materialistic world. And David HaMelech is teaching us what kind of approach we are supposed to have when we encounter materialism, when we encounter the world. Do you remember that Yaakov is preparing to meet Esav, and Esav is marching at him with 400 soldiers, and Yaakov makes a statement, Im Lavan Garti, Va'echar Adata. I have lived with Lavan, and I've come late until now. In other words, I've dragged on, come here with my family till now. Now I'm about to meet you, Esav. So please understand where I'm coming from, and let's be brothers. Let's have brotherly love. So Rashi quotes from Chazal. It says, Im Lavan Garti, with Lavan I lived. Garti is Gimel Reish Taf Yud, which is the same letters just mixed around as the word Taryag, Taf Reish Yud Gimel. So what was Yaakov essentially saying to Esav? With Lavan, Harasha, the evil man Lavan, my father-in-law, I lived. But at the same time, I kept the 613 mitzvot. Taryag, which is the numerical value of 613. Taf is 400, Reish is 200, Yud is 10, and Gimel is 3, equals 613. Shamarti, I kept the mitzvot, and I did not learn from Lavan's bad actions. By the way, there's a joke amongst Chassidim, Im Lavan Garti. Someone asks you if you want to have vodka l'chaim or whiskey l'chaim. So Lavan is white. So Lavan Garti, I'd rather have the white one. But getting right back into our subject, what is Yaakov essentially telling Esav? That I living in this world, the world of Lavan, the world of foolishness, the world of trickery, I have succeeded to cleave onto the 613 mitzvot. In other words, Garti, from the same word as David the Melech is using right here in our Pasuk Yutet, Ger he feels himself, Yaakov felt himself as a stranger. In other words, Yaakov did not allow himself, here's the punchline, Yaakov did not allow himself to become at home in the coarseness of the world, in the disturbances of the world. Yaakov was determined the entire time to remain dedicated to the Torah and mitzvot. So when he looked, Ger Anochi Ba'aretz, David HaMelech says, that's really a quote that it's almost as if Yaakov said this quote. I was in the world. I dealt with Lavan, don't worry. But I didn't feel at home. I made sure the entire time not to be at home with Lavan. I should keep to the 613 mitzvot the entire time. As it says in the Medrash, that the entire 20 years that Yaakov worked with the animals of Lavan, he said, repeated again and again, Tehillim. Right after this chapter of 119, starting from 120, Kufchaf, you have 15 Shir HaMa'alot. Bezrat Hashem, when we get there, we'll talk about it, which correspond, there were 15 steps leading up to the Beis HaMikdash, to the courtyard, and there were the doors of Nicanor, the gates of Nicanor. So each one, there was a special Shir HaMa'alot, a special song, which corresponded to another step that David the Melech was so waiting for to build the Beis HaMikdash. He made a number of major steps in that direction, but unfortunately, he did not merit to be in the Beis HaMikdash itself. So, what Yaakov Avinu is saying as follows, and that's really what David the Melech is saying, that we need to have boundaries in the world. We need to remember that there is a realm of holiness and there's a realm of materialism. I know we talked over the past couple of days. I was listening too. What was the main accomplishment of the giving of the Torah? Of the relationship and the connection of the Elyonim, the higher realm, the spiritual realm, and the Tachtonim, the materialistic realm. We have to merge them together. That was the main accomplishment of Matan Torah. I understand that. But before we merge, we have to remember and respect boundaries. That each one has its own realm, each one has its own boundary, and to be able to respect the boundaries. If you remember, in the Medrash that we talked about the other day, we talked about the fact that there was a mashal, a metaphor, of a king that said that the people of Rome cannot go down to Syria, the people of Syria cannot go up to Rome. And there's a pasuk, a verse in the Tehillim, from a few chapters before 119. I believe it's 115. It says as follows: Hashamayim Lashem. The heavens is for Hashem. The haaretz natan l'bnei adam, and earth is for men. That was before the Torah was given. But once the Torah was given, Hashem said, now we're going to blend the two. Now we're going to mix the two. That we don't have separate entities of spirituality and materialism. Rather, we merge, we blend the spirituality with materialism. So for a very long time, I've been thinking to myself, so now that the Torah was given, this verse, seemingly, really doesn't have any place in the Torah. Because now, we've already passed that stage. We've already realized that Hashamayim, Shamayim LaHashem, not only for Hashem, but also spirituality is supposed to blend with the materialism. And the haaretz, and the materialism is not only meant for Bnei Adam, but it's also meant to be elevated, Lashem. So why do we continue to say this verse? And also we sing the Hallel, Hashamayim, Shamayim Lashem, V'ha'aretz Natan L'nei Adam. Why are we still singing it? Isn't this something from the past? It's changed already. Shamayim, spirituality, is not only reserved now for Hashem, so to speak, but it's also supposed to become part of our lives. And the haaretz, and the earth, Natan L'nei Adam, very nice, but now we're supposed to elevate it. So why do we keep singing it? And I think this is the explanation, that which we're learning right now. That true, that we need to blend and balance spirituality and materialism, that they should not be two separate realms, but they should be mixed. Okay, it sounds very nice. But before then, we have to remember that there are boundaries. There's the boundary of all spirituality, and there's the boundary of all materialism. And they cannot mix. Yes, you heard me correctly. They cannot mix. Because Hashem created each one with its own unique values. Now that we understand, now that we've accepted that there are different boundaries, there's a boundary of spirituality and there's a boundary of materialism, now we could start talking about blending the two. And that's a wonderful message of how we cannot leave spirituality just for the higher realms and materialism to be buried in the lower worlds, rather to blend both. That's wonderful. But when can you blend both properly? After the Torah was given? Only after we realize and we recognize and we remember and we don't forget that each one has its own realm. We have to respect someone else's space. We cannot intrude. We cannot interfere into someone else's realm. We teach that to young children as well, that they should remember that other people, as close as they may be to the person, cannot intrude into their own personal space. And that can be translated, of course, into many ways. But what's the point? The point is, Achdut, unity, is a very warm, inspiring message. But it can be taken to the wrong places. So Yaakov Avinu is telling Esav, I remember, Ger Anochi Ba'aretz, quoting Tehillim. David HaMelech says it as well. Ba'aretz, Artziut. When you talk about materialism, I'm a ger. I'm estranged. I don't want to be head and shoulders into materialism. I want to remain divine. I want to remain connected to what's really important. And that's what Yaakov Avinu says. V'taryag mitzvot shamarti. The 613 mitzvot I've kept. So this is the message of the pasuk. To quote again, David HaMelech, Ger Anochi Ba'aretz. I feel estranged in the land, in the artziut, in the materialism of the world. Therefore, Al taster mimeni mitzvotecha. So don't hide from your mitzvot. Please, bring them on. Give me as many mitzvot as possible to keep me afloat, to keep me above and beyond the materialistic disturbances which can take me away from your mitzvot. So that's the first beautiful interpretation that I want to share with you. Then comes something really, really meaningful. And this is a quote from the Tzemach Tzedek, a beautiful interpretation into this verse. Ger anochi ba'aretz, I feel estranged ba'aretz, in the land. Al taster mimeni mitzvotecha, do not hide from me your mitzvot. So the Tzemach Tzedek says something fascinating. He says that when we talk about Aretz, the land, what are we referring to? According to the Chassidus, according to the Pnimius HaTorah, please listen closely. You really need to put on your thinking cap for this. We're talking about two types of Aretz. Aretz, earth, the literal earth down here, and then you have Eretz HaElyona, the higher level of earth. That's called the Gan Eden, the heavenly court. That's a spiritual earth. When Mashiach comes, that's going to be part of our literal earth. So we have Aretz Shel Mata, let's call it the literal earth. Then you have the Aretz Shel Mala, the elevated earth. We are now in Yerushalayim, and the same thing applies. The same concept applies to Yerushalayim. We have Yerushalayim Shel Mata, the literal Yerushalayim, right here, down here, the Jerusalem of the world. But then you have the Yerushalayim Shel Mala, the Jerusalem of above. And there's a beautiful passage of Chazal which says that Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Lo avo l'Yerushalayim shel Ma'ala ad she'avo l'Yerushalayim shel Mata. I will not enter into the Yerushalayim of above, which is a spiritual Yerushalayim, elevated Yerushalayim, until I come down to Yerushalayim shel Mata, to the literal Yerushalayim. So, in a great way, in a great sense, down here is the most important, because at first glance we say, oh, what's the real Yerushalayim? Up there, no? The spiritual one. No. Hashem says, I will not come up to the Yerushalayim Shel Ma'ala until I come to the literal Yerushalayim. Until I build the Beit HaMikdash. Hashem is also considered in Galut, so to speak. Obviously, he's not limited to the Galut, but he's here with us in this Galut, in this exile. And Hashem says, I will not go to the elevated Yerushalayim until I come to the Yerushalayim Shel Mata, down here, to the quote unquote real Yerushalayim. And so, following along this line that Tzemach Tzedek explains David the Melech's words, King David says, Ger anochi ba'aretz, I feel estranged in this land. You know which land we're talking about? The lower level of land. The literal land, right here, this world. Olam hazeh. Ger anochi ba'aretz. However, I feel estranged over here because the beauty of this world is hidden. You have to work hard to zoom in and to see the beauty, the treasure that is in this world. Therefore, David HaMelech asks Hashem, please, use this land to connect our Aretz to the above Aretz. The Eretz HaTachtona, the lower level of land, to the Eretz HaElyona. And then, that will help me feel at home. Because I want to feel at home over here. But the problem is, there's so much, as we'll see in 2 verses, there's so much evil in the world, that how can I feel at home over here? So David the Melech is pleading by Hashem, and he says, please, help me connect the 2 levels of Aretz, the 2 levels of land. I thought that was such a beautiful, really, right on, beautiful, beautiful interpretation into this verse. Let's move on into Pasuk Chaf, verse number 20. We're still in the middle of the letter Gimel. Every verse still begins with the letter Gimel. Garsa nafshi letava el mishpatecha b'cholet. My soul is crushed with yearning for your laws at all time. I always feel so broken and crushed because I'm yearning so much. I can't wait to do another mitzvah. And this is pretty much connected with verse number 21. Ga'arta zaydim arurim, you blast the accursed wicked. Hashogim mitzvotecha, who stray from your commandments. Unfortunately, there are many that cave in to the cravings of this world. And that makes them so involved and so immersed into the into the insane ways of this world that I need you, Hashem, to keep me away from them, or at least to keep me away from their ways. Excuse me. So the people itself, Chazal teach us, we want to bring everybody closer. But the ways of the wicked, we have to be so careful because it's so easy to get caught up with the wicked ways that there are in this world. So David HaMelech continues in verse number 22. Gal me'alai cherpa vavuz. Because there are these people around that laugh and ridicule when someone is doing something good. Gal me'alai, over here gal means something else. It ultimately means the same thing, but it means like the word galgal. To roll from on me, shame. Excuse me, cast away from me, disgrace and abuse. When you roll something off and you cast it away, then you reveal what was underneath. So gal, we get back to square one. Gal means revelation, but more specifically, it means legalgel. Please take away from me, cast away from me my shame when I'm involved with these people and they ridicule me. It's so hard to be connected and to remain committed to your mitzvot. Ki edotecha natzarti. For your testimonies I observe. Over here it's eidotecha, unlike we learned a few days ago, where it was eidvotecha. Over here we learn eidotecha. Eidvotecha was in verse number 14, and now in verse number 22, Chavbet, ki eidotecha natzarti. Natzarti doesn't only mean shamarti. Shamarti means to guard. Natzarti means like a wall, to put a strong wall around it, a choma. That is like really keeping your mitzvahs close to me. So please, Hashem, take away the shame and disgrace and abuse that these people are embarrassing me. David HaMelech says, please, because I'm guarding your mitzvah so strongly. And finally, in verse Chav Gimel 23, he says, Gam yashvu sarim, even when the ministers, the leaders meet, they're sitting around, binid baru, they speak badly about me. Nevertheless, even when they speak badly about me, I'm still dedicated to you, says David HaMelech. Avdecha, your servant, means myself. Your servant, yasiach b'chukecha, studies your statutes. Even when they're ridiculing me, I still am committed to learn your Torah mitzvot. Then there's the final verse of this portion of Gimel, the letter Gimel. Gam. Pasuk Chav Daled starts with the letter Gimel. Gam eidotecha shashuai. For your testimonies are my delight. Anshe atzati, my mentors. So these leaders, they're sitting around, they seem to be hotshots, and they're ridiculing me. They're bad-mouthing me. I don't seek their advice. David HaMelech says, for me, they're not role models. I don't look up to them. Your testimonies are my advice. When I need advice, says David HaMelech, I turn to you, Hashem. I look at your Torah, and I follow your ways. And that is the best way to seek advice. Just one more point before we finish the class today. And this is a special interpretation from the Chida, the great Sephardic sage, the Chida. And he says as follows. We said a couple of verses ago, Garsa nafshi latava. My soul is crushed with a longing for your judgments every moment. So really this verse alludes to the idea that a person that studies the Torah must interrupt his study for doing a mitzvah. For example, when it comes time for reading the Shema in the morning, sunrise, for the next few hours, there's a mitzvah to read the Shema. So David HaMelech says as follows. Some people, they're quote unquote so dedicated to the Torah that they didn't have time for doing mitzvot. David HaMelech says that's not the right way. It's wonderful to learn Torah. Don't get me wrong. But when it comes time to do a mitzvah, you need to stop learning and do the mitzvah. To the extent that it says in Chazal, Kol ha'omer ein li ela Torah, afilu Torah in lo. If someone says, I don't have anything else besides for Torah, only Torah, nothing else, he doesn't even have Torah. Because Torah is a package deal with the mitzvah, to the ma'asim tovim, good deeds. And therefore, David HaMelech says that your mitzvot, your commandments, are a major part. In the next verse, in verse number 21, Chaf Aleph, Ga'arta zeidim arurim hashogim mitzvatecha. Those people who go away from your mitzvot, and they say, oh, I only want to learn Torah, but I'm not up to doing your mitzvot, that's totally wrong. So David HaMelech stresses, my soul is crushed for a longing for your judgments at every moment. Every moment I'm looking forward, Hashem, to doing your mitzvot. As the last verse that we learned earlier of the paragraph Gimel in Pasuk Chavdala 24, Gam eidotecha shashu ayan she'atzati. David HaMelech refers to the mitzvot as being shashu'ai, my pleasure. And it's clear that David HaMelech is so connected to the mitzvot. He looks forward to doing the mitzvot, that we should really learn from him, and to be able to also develop a pleasure in observing Hashem's mitzvot. Thank you very much for joining us. Bezrat Hashem, Friday morning, 9:30, we have a special Kabbalah Cafe. Don't forget that the cafe is on you and the Kabbalah is on me. So Bezrat Hashem, that will be a good relationship. If anybody wants to sponsor the Kabbalah Cafe or any of the other shiurim, whether in honor of someone's birthday or in memory of someone's yahrzeit, it will be a great mitzvah, especially today that Baruch Hashem, these shiurim are being listened all around the world, and on our YouTube channel, on Facebook. This is a great zchut for someone who is dear to you. And so looking forward to learning together very often, Bezrat Hashem. And this is such a great zchut to be able to learn together Tehillim with the commentary of Chassidus. All the best. Shalom, shalom.